Nice to meet you.
Glad to be here.
Lovely record. And here's what I understand about it is that you made another record during the lockdown and you scrapped it and then you made this one. Is that right?
Yeah, sometimes I have a process where sometimes I make records to make other records. In that I knew I was going to go to work trying to find some music that I wanted to sing that I hadn't written myself. And so made it through one record, wasn't quite right. And then I latched on to a couple of soul songs. When I started singing those, something happened and you could feel that there was some life in it. And so I pursued that and ended up, 55 songs. 15 songs we used, 40 are on the ground.
That's a lot. So you recorded a lot. So there's another Bruce Springsteen album somewhere that's just gone. You just got rid of it.
It's probably a couple of them.
Yeah. Why? Do you mind if I ask why? Is it a gut thing? Is it just like this isn't the right? Because I know you're a bit of a perfectionist, right?
Yeah, I do that often. I've got tons of outtakes, and so I'm working on projects, obviously, to get that music out also. But it sometimes it's just part of my process. I need to go in, I need to make the record, hear it before I know, okay, this is me at my best. This is me at my second best. This is me not very good at all. And so I'll take my time and until I get a group of songs where I feel like, yeah, I'm bringing something to this material and this works as a whole, as an album. And so I've got my criteria that I wait to make sure that I'm accomplishing.
It's nice to know that even at this stage in the career, I mean, you're a bit into it now, and you've kind of done a lot. Like, I don't want to break it to you, but you did all right for yourself. It's nice to know that you won't compromise still.
Well, there's no reason now, if there never was really. I mean, I always used to think that I used to run into my pals and go, oh, I got to get my record out by, like, for what reason? By November, by January, I got to get on tour. I always thought none of those things are true. You don't have to put a record out. You don't have to get out on the road. All you have to do is make sure the day you release that record, nobody cares how long it took you to make a bad record. Nobody cares at all. All they care about the day of that record release is that record any good or not? And if it took you 2 years or if it took you 2 days, and I've made records in 4 days and I've made records in 3 years, all that matters is that you made the record you want, you're at peace with it, and that it's a good record when you put it out.
Why do you think you have that perspective and others don't? I know that's a bit of $1 million question, but any thoughts on it?
I always felt like I didn't have a choice to compromise. I said my talents were such where I felt I had to be using them at their peak to be anywhere nearly as good as I wanted to be. I said, I'm not comfortable putting out my second best or it's okay, or it'll do till next time. I never felt I was good enough to just throw records out there like that. I needed to be at my best, at my peak, doing my best work, making my best decisions before I put a record out. Then I could go out and confidently tour for 2 years, 3 hours a night behind that music.
I heard that, though, in reading your memoir and in the lead up to this record, that you were not delighted, we'll say, with your vocals in the past, or it wasn't something you focused on in the past. And I want to talk about that in the context of this record, that you wanted to put your vocals front and center. You wanted to make a big vocal record. But am I right to think that, like, you're listening to Born to Run and you're going, I didn't sing that very well?
That one's okay.
Yeah, it was all right.
But and most of the ones that I let out, usually, I got a vocal that I was satisfied with, if not maybe ecstatic about. But what I was kind of saying in relation to this music was I built my other records around, first, the song. I got to have the best song I can write. Second, the band and the arrangement. The band has to be killing it, kicking ass, right? On our, and we got to get the right take. And then I got to get the right voice. Voice always came usually last, And so my singing was always at the service of my writing, of my arranging, of my performing. And on this record, I had an opportunity just to choose material that would focus on your voice and on your singing ability, which I really, really enjoyed doing it because I love to sing, and finding material that was already greatly written, first of all, as all these songs were. But then that I could just tailor to my own vocals. That was a lot of fun for me. It's something different.
How was the feeling of putting your voice front and center in this thing? Is it a different feeling than the records you've made before? Like, I think what I'm curious about is like, is it a challenge? Is it a risk? Is it unmooring? Like, is it something to focus on your voice on this record like never before?
It's just fun. I mean, I enjoy recording. I record every day.
Really?
In my studio. I'm kind of consecutively making records right now, and I like recording and I like singing. Writing. If I was writing constantly, I'd probably be writing my own material also, mostly. But you don't write at your command. Songs come to you, they stop for a while, they come back. So in the meantime, I said, well, I'd like to keep recording. We were in the middle of COVID. There was nothing going on. I've got this huge recording studio on my farm. And I said, I want to stay busy. So I said, well, I'm just going to start singing some things that I really love and see what happens. And so ended up with this record.
I imagine that you needed to stay busy. I mean, for someone who tours the way you do, I imagine that during the pandemic, it would be hard to stay still a little bit. I know for a lot of musicians I talked to, it was hard.
Well, I'm lucky, we've done well, and I got a beautiful farm and I got my own studio here. And if you had to be locked up someplace, it was a good place to be locked up. The guys that really suffered and that I really fell for were your workaday musicians who were depending on their income from those weekly club gigs that completely dried up for years. I don't know how some of those guys made it through, how those men and women made it through, and I've done that in the past for many years in my own life where, hey, when Friday came around, I was broke. I had between Friday and Sunday to make what was going to keep me alive from Monday to Friday next week, and so I know what it was like to work week to week to week to week. And if you lost a week, it was catastrophic. So it was terrible for all the real, particularly club level and mid-level working musicians, really hard, Me, I just had to find some way to stay busy. But
back when you were doing those club gigs, back when you were a working musician playing the clubs that way, soul music was a big part of your repertoire back then, right?
Oh, yeah. Soul Man and Mustang Sally I've played 10,000 times. I've played it. So that's why on this record I said, well, I'm going to move towards things. They're a little obscure. Some of them are somewhat well known. And I just tried to find a balance. So when people came to the project, they weren't hearing just me, singing Mustang Sally. They were hearing Do I Love You or Night Shift or things that were a little that weren't that familiar.
But soul music is a big part of your philosophy, I think. I mean, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but like when I see your band, when I see you and your band, I see James Brown. I see hardest working man in show business. I see someone leaving sweat out on the floor. I found this concert you did in Stockholm in '81, and you said it seemed like in those songs by the Drifters and Smokey Robinson, there was a promise, and it was just the promise of a right to a decent life. Like soul music is meaningful to you. Yeah.
I mean, it's an incredibly important American form. It's it's just it's an incredible American voice. And we grew up in an area where the bands that came, we were on the shore. So summertime, everybody flocks to the coast. Every show band, soul band, top 40 band, all came to the Jersey Shore to make money in the summer, playing in the summer clubs up and down the beach. So we were inundated with music that had horns and soul music and Motown. And we all grew up singing and playing it from when I was 16. You know, I was learning those Motown records and those soul records. And so there's a big history of it here at the Shore, and we carry it with a lot of the Shore musicians carry a lot of that with them.
So is it then that you hear Bob Dylan and you hear like poetry and you hear more like abstract, like meaningful expressionism, and you like take that into that top 40 mentality, that Motown mentality? Is that kind of it?
Yeah, that's what I did. I said, I'm a creature of top 40 radio. You know, I didn't grow up reading. I was a guy that I learned what I learned from listening to those performers and those wonderful artists that came across the radio waves. And, you know, it filled me with it. The secret of that music was it constantly whispered in your ear, there's another life somewhere. There's a more exciting life. There's a sexier life. There's more fun. There's a party going on you're not invited to. All of this was on the airwaves. And so I said, I want to be a part of that somehow, you know. And so I became a musician. And, you know, we bring the party with us. So,
but then it's the Dylan stuff. It's the times the era changing stuff.
Yeah,
it's the
all of the Bob's lyrics. What they did is I took Bob's lyrics and I sort of put them into rock and roll music. You know, into rock and roll music. I used his lyrical style, morphed it into what I would do, and blended it with rock and roll music. You know, that was just said I want to make music where you sing like Roy Orbison, where the records sound like Phil Spector, and where the lyrics are have the power of Dylan's lyrics, and the whole thing has the physical power of an Elvis record. That was my goal as a 24-year-old New Jersey kid. That's what I wanted to do.
When did you realize it was working? Like, listen, I've done, just so you know, like I've done dance. I used to do dance gigs all the time. And what I loved about doing dance gigs is that I could play music and I knew if it was working or not by whether people were dancing or not. Like it's
always great.
You know what I mean? It's like a comedian. You get laughs, you don't get laughs. That's it. That's your, but when do you start realizing, because people connect to your music on a different level, on a deeper level too. When do you start realizing that's happening?
I probably got into it when I was really young, because I started to write when I was even in clubs, and I saw people start to gather around my own music, you know. And then once again, it was as simple as we were a band. We got up and we played. Did people listen?
Yeah.
Did they dance?
Yeah.
Initially, we started out as a dance band, and then in the late 60s, it became something where you became more of a concert band, where people would come and sit on the floor and listen to what you were doing. And that was when I started to write a lot of original material. But I always drew an audience. And so I knew, and plus I could just internally feel that I was onto something, you know. I could feel it in my bones when I played that music, you know. It was kinetic, you know, it was electric, you know, it was I knew that I was reaching my audience.
But you were reaching them in a way, not to harp on this, but you were reaching them in a way that spoke to their everyday lives. Like it spoke to their own sort of struggles growing up, and it's just sort of the struggles of trying to hold on to a job or something like that. It was deeper than just, you know, than dancing, you know.
Yeah, I didn't want to be a fantasist, you know. I wasn't a fan so much of sort of fantastical rock music. I wrote about my father's life, what my life was like growing up, my friends' lives were like, and I stayed in New Jersey. So even well into my 30s, I was out in the clubs on Friday or Saturday night, and I was pretty much living that life, you know, and that was what I was interested in recording. You know, that seemed important to me. It seemed as a way I kept faith with my audience and with my fans. And it was something that I enjoyed documenting. And I thought, well, if somebody wanted to know what America was like in the second half of the 20th century during the post-industrial times, if you went to my music, you would get a sense of what people were living through at that time.
And they stayed with you. They stayed with you even when you stopped writing about that. I mean, you didn't write as much about that, you know?
Yeah.
They stayed with you when you started writing more about love. They stayed with you when you were writing about other things, you know?
Well, I think, if you write good about anything,
yeah,
you'll draw an audience, because people's lives are so multifaceted. Music doesn't have to be, you don't need to have to take as your literal subject work, war, hard times. Music, even music that say Soul Man, or Mustang Sally, it has a way of entering the time period it was created in and addressing the issues of that time, even if it's through just the pure joy of, I'm going to sing along, I want to dance to this. When you think of the Vietnam War, you think of Motown, you think of Creedence Clearwater, all music that was not directly related to writing, to taking as their subject, say Vietnam, but still whose music, when played today, brings to life those times. So music functions in a lot of different ways. You can be direct about it, or you don't have to be direct about it. You still enter the culture and you pick up the residual of those times.
Did you read the Bob Dylan piece in the New Yorker? I can't believe I'm saying that. But did you read that big piece on Bob Dylan that just came out 4 or 5 days ago?
I don't think I did, no.
They didn't talk about you in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They said, I want to read it for you because I think it's interesting with regards to what you just said.
All right.
It said, the bargain for Bruce Springsteen is that his magic act is that he'll stay in shape, he'll move like a younger man, he'll sing you his hits, but he'll also salt the performance with newer songs about parenthood, aging, mortality, the work that interests him now. Everyone goes home happy. Which I think it says to something that you're willing to change, and if you're there with your audience, they're going to come with you. But you also have to have respect for what your audience is there for sometimes.
You do. I mean, I've been in situations where I can remember when I made a record, Tunnel of Love, and this was 1987. I had people come up to me and say, yeah, I used to like you when you wrote about the cars and the girls, but the wedding, you lost me there. You lost me there. So you have to be ready. You have to be ready for conversations with your fans where they go, you lost me there, because they may find you again when they get older or something, but you always you got to remain true to yourself and true to the music that's in your heart and that you want to write, and that way you've got to believe that you're keeping faith with your audience, and that audience is going to keep faith with you. That's the deal, and whether it works out or not, that's the operational process.
Pick a song for me to play off this record and tell me what, because I think there's going to be singles that are meaningful to you, but I'm going to play a song after this record, and I want to know if there's a song that's particularly meaningful to you in your own life.
All right, play Night Shift.
Why?
Because Night Shift was a song by the Commodores, which they wrote after Marvin Gaye passed away and after Jackie Wilson died. It's a beautiful hymn to lost artists, and it's just a great, sexy soul song that is it's a little soul prayer. So it's quite wonderful.
Post Lionel Richie Commodores too, Walter Orange, right?
Yes, right. They had a hit. They had a hit right away.
And they won a Grammy for it and everything.
It was a great tune, yeah.
Bruce, lovely to meet you. Thanks for everything.
Great to meet you. Thanks a lot.